Hey, welcome back to Real Takes, where we are all movie love all the time. I'm Stott, and tonight we are shining all our movie love on the 1966 film How to Steal a Million, directed by William Wyler and starring Audrey Hepburn, Peter O'Toole, Hugh, Griffith, and Eli Wallach. Now, How to Steal a Million is firmly rooted in the romantic comedy tradition that comes out of early talking films in the 1930s. It's a little bit of a heist caper movie. It's a little bit of a mistaken identity movie, which was a huge thing in the 30s. But it has a modern feel for two reasons. One, because they shot on location in Paris, which in the 60s, more and more Hollywood films were doing. They were shooting on location rather than in backlots. But these kind of standard rom-coms were still being shot on the lots and on sets a lot. So the fact that they used Paris in all its glory gives it a modern take. And then also that it's an art heist caper movie kind of gives it a different edge. We see a lot of art in the film. There's a lot of talk about art in the film. And it's really a lot of fun. Here's the deal. I'm not going to be talking about the deep character exploration of this film. I'm not going to be talking about the sophisticated plot twists used in this film, and I'm not going to be talking about the cinematic revolution that happens in this film. This film is pure fun and delight. That's all we're doing with this movie. We are having fun. And in the many times I've watched this movie, it has never failed to entertain me, to make me laugh, to take my mind off whatever's going on, and give me a really fun 2 hours. And I am deeply grateful for that. Now, one thing I don't understand with this movie, or I've wondered a lot about, is why it isn't known in the way, say, Bringing Up Baby is known, or Adam's Rib is known, or Roman Holiday is still known. And my theory about this is that the title sucks. How to Steal a Million. Does that make you want to watch the movie? It doesn't make me want to watch the movie. And it's not even really what the film is about. Apparently the working title while they were filming it was Venus Rising, which is so much better. And I don't know why they didn't go with that. That's also not really what the film is about. I personally would have called it The Venus Affair. But since it came out in 1966 and I was born in 1970, nobody asked me. Oh well. But for me, this movie entertains at the level of some of the great classic romantic comedies of the golden era of Hollywood. And I hope it entertains you at that level too. And a lot of the reason it does that is because of all the talented people who worked on it, starting with the director, William Wyler. Now, William Wyler is one of the big directors of Hollywood, and his career spanned decades. So he started making films at the tail end of the silent era, like in the late 20s. And then in the 30s, he was cranking out these kind of formulaic films. But by the end of the 30s, he had made 3 really important films with Bette Davis: Jezebel, The Letter, and The Little Foxes. And then in the 40s, he made 2 of the most important American films about World War II, Mrs. Miniver, which I also love, and The Best Years of Our Lives, which is a stunningly beautiful movie about soldiers coming home. He rounded out the 40s with The Heiress, and then he kicked off the 50s with Roman Holiday, which catapulted Audrey Hepburn to international superstardom and got her an Oscar. And then later in the 50s, he went on to make these sweeping, epic Hollywood films like Ben-Hur and The Big Country. And then by the time we get to How to Steal a Million, he had already made The Children's Hour with Audrey Hepburn and Shirley MacLaine. And 2 years after this, he would make Funny Face with Barbra Streisand. So that is a career, right? Like that is 4 decades of filmmaking. which means that when he read the script for How to Steal a Million, he was pretty aware that maybe it was preposterous and a little ridiculous and maybe a little superficial. And he felt that he was going to have to lean really heavily on the visuals to make the movie work. And so he lobbied the studio in Hollywood to shoot on location in Paris, which they did, and Paris looks great. And he brought in a really heavy-hitting production designer to kind of make every set as lavish and, rich looking as possible. And he leaned into the art heist element of the film and featured the art. And then he had Audrey Hepburn and Givenchy. And you kind of can't go wrong. Now, Audrey Hepburn had been collaborating with Givenchy for over 10 years at this point. She started working with him when she made the movie Sabrina in the early 50s, mid 50s. They had decided for that film, her character goes through this transformation after going to Paris, and the producers decided she should have a French designer make dresses for her. So she went to Paris, and that's when she first worked with Givenchy, and she came to love him. She felt like his designs worked really well on her. So in most of her movies, most famously in Breakfast at Tiffany's, she's mostly wearing Givenchy. And in her personal life, for evening wear, she wore Givenchy all the time. So they had this over decade-long relationship at this point. But they came up with some really fun designs. In her first scene in the film, she is featuring what was known at the time as space age couture, which, I mean, for that alone, you should be watching the movie, right? Another way that the movie really works is that it's a pleasure to watch Audrey Hepburn have a leading man her age. Now, all leading women throughout the whole history of Hollywood up until today are sometimes forced to work opposite men, very much their senior. But for some reason, Audrey Hepburn got saddled with that a lot. So in Sabrina, she's with Humphrey Bogart, who's 28 years her senior. Love in the Afternoon, she's with Gary Cooper. He's, I believe, also 28 years her senior. In Funny Face, she's with Fred Astaire, who's 30 years her senior. And then in Charade, she was with Cary Grant, who's also about 30 years her senior. Now, to Cary Grant's credit, he originally turned down Love in the Afternoon that Gary Cooper took because he thought he was too old. And then he took Charade, but he insisted that they shift the script so that Audrey Hepburn was pursuing him and he wasn't pursuing her because he thought he was too old. So credit to Cary Grant. But still, here we have Audrey Hepburn on screen with Peter O'Toole. And they have great chemistry. There were some rumors they were having an affair. There are some reports that those were just rumors. I have no idea. They have great chemistry. Apparently they became good friends. And they really work the witty dialogue. You see both of them leaning on their comedy chops hard and making the material work. And it's really fun to see them working together. So there's just so much that is delightful in this film and really fun in this film. I will say that it was not very well received when it came out, which might be another reason that it didn't kind of lift off into another level of recognition that might have helped it span the decades with more renown. So it was 1966 when it came out, and, filmmaking was going in a much grittier, more realistic direction, which I love. And the conflicts over the Vietnam War were heating up. Civil rights movement was in full swing in the mid-60s. And so this kind of throwback rom-com seems sort of out of touch with the times. And many reviewers were like, oh, we've seen Audrey Hepburn do this so many times. Do we really need to see it again? And okay, it's fun and charming, but really, is it anything else? And, honestly, if I were alive in 1966, being me, I might have felt all those same things. Like, I would much rather go see whatever Agnes Varda had just made than see another sort of throwback rom-com. But because I saw it completely out of all of those contexts about 10 years ago for the first time, I'm free to just enjoy it for exactly what it is, which is a really fun, delightful romp through Paris, watching two great comedy performers at the top of their game. And it gives me no end of pleasure to watch it, and I hope it gives you no end of pleasure to watch it. I'll say one more thing. It's interesting that this is actually a late career film for both William Wyler and Audrey Hepburn. Now, for William Wyler, that makes sense. It was his fourth decade of filmmaking. Like I said, he would make Funny Girl 2 years later, and that was basically his last film. Maybe he made one more film, and then he retired for the last 10 years of his life. Audrey Hepburn was only in her late 30s, but she would only make 2 more films over the next 2 years, and then she wouldn't make another film for almost 10 years, and she only made a handful of films in the 80s. She essentially retired and devoted her public life to humanitarian causes, including refugee children and world hunger. So it's important to note that even though this is a later career film for both William Wyler and Audrey Hepburn, there is nothing tired or slow about this movie. It zips right along. Everybody's at the top of their game. Everybody's having a lot of fun. And I hope you have a lot of fun too. And I will see you next Wednesday. Thanks for watching Real Takes. Hit the subscribe button below so the algorithms will tell you when new episodes are out. And if you want to support Real Takes, please visit my Patreon page where you can join at any tier from $2 to $100 per thing I make. The $15 tier is specifically about supporting Real Takes, and you'll get behind the scenes information and be thanked in future videos. See you next Wednesday.